defining moments. We've talked about King David at the city of Ziklag, where he said he encouraged himself in the Lord his God in a moment of true despair. Wife and children, they've been captured, the city's been burned. His men were angry with him. And he saw God in that very difficult time, and that's the growing principle. But this is all a part of a process from the time that God had anointed him to be the future king of Israel. God had been taking him on a journey, a maturing process. And there were things that happened along the way. And one of the things that we talked about yesterday was the time that he was in the cave of Adullam, and he was right behind Saul as Saul was, quote, taking care of his business. David cut off a piece of his garment and held it up and said, "I could have killed you, but I will not touch God's anointed." Somebody say, "Well, Pastor King, what do you mean by this?" Well, I believe that a person who has been called to be the man of God in ministry, and God has placed you under that person's leadership, then you have to understand that spiritual anointing. And it's not your responsibility to take them down, stab them in the back, or anything else. If so, then you're touching God's anointed. Now, I know that the argument is going to be this: "Well, Pastor King, you don't know what that person did." No, but God does. And that's where your trust and your faith in God comes in. Because the Bible tells us that God raises people up and God takes them down. And these are times that you have to trust God and put the situation in God's hands. I've known of people who've stepped out of this, and they've gone after the man of God, and it has not gone well for them. And I've chronicled it, I've marked it, I've seen it, where a person who does these things against God's anointed, things just starts happening in their lives. It's almost unbelievable, because it's a very, very serious thing. Now, I know that there are people who have responsibilities in leadership, and sometimes there are people who have to be disciplined. But see, here's the thing. There's that which is a responsibility of others who are in leadership, and then there are people who just gleefully, "Man, I'm going to get that guy or gal, whoever it may be. I'm going to get him." And you take that on yourself. You take it out of God's hands, then you've got blood on your hands. So, he said, "Pastor, what do you do?" Man, if you ever prayed, if there ever been a time in your life when you've prayed, this is the time that you pray. And you say, "God, I'm not going to touch God's anointed. I'm going to pray that, God, you deal with the situation. And you do it in the right way, and you do it in the only way that's proper before God. And God, I'm going to trust you to handle it." This is Pastor Jack King with the gospel on the radio broadcast.